Hello everyone, my name is Cheryl. I'm one of the key relationship managers at Lawyer Checker. Today we're going to be looking at the Thirdfort ID and source of funds service, which going forward you're going to use to verify your clients. So what I'm going to talk through is how you initiate a Thirdfort check using the Lawyer Checker platform. I'll show you what the client is doing as they're completing the check from their end. And then I'll talk you through the reports that you can expect to receive back once the client has completed the check. So to initiate a Thirdfort check then, what you're going to do is log into the Lawyer Checker platform. This is exactly what you're going to see once you're logged in. On the right hand side, you're going to click Perform Search under Thirdfort ID Checker. You'll then be asked to enter your client's name, their mobile phone number, the case reference number, and you can also request that the client completes a source of funds questionnaire. The reason that we asked for the case reference number is just so you can relate your Thirdfort report back to your case file. You're then going to click Submit. What that does is it sends a text message to your client, which instructs them to download the Thirdfort app onto their mobile phone. So once the client has downloaded the app then, the first thing that the app is going to ask the client to do is to enter a verification code. So it's two-factor authentication. This is a security measure. We want to make sure that it's the right person initiating the check from the very start. The Thirdfort app is then formed of three parts. So we've got a check on personal information, verification of the ID document, and then source of funds. So if we just start with personal information, the client is going to be asked to submit their first name, last name, email address, date of birth. You can see from the functionality of the app itself, it's very straightforward to use, so it's suitable for any type of client. And it's also important to know that this check can be completed on a tablet or an iPad as well. The client will then be asked to select their home country. So Thirdfort is able to verify up to 195 different nationalities. So it's really, really useful if you're not seeing your clients face to face or if you're dealing with any matters abroad. They'll then pop in their postcode and they'll select their address through the app, or they'll enter their address manually. Now to move forward with the Thirdfort check, what the client is going to be asked to do is to agree to Thirdfort's terms and conditions. Now within these terms and conditions, there's a privacy policy that the client can read through here. Now, effectively, once the client has completed the check, Thirdfort will retain the client's personal information. That data is held within the UK. And the reason that Thirdfort keeps this is just so that Thirdfort can retain the client's ID report. So you'll see that once the client's completed the check, that there's functionality within the app that allows the client to share their ID report with other vendors, providing that that vendor is also a Thirdfort client. Now, on the other hand, if the client didn't want Thirdfort to retain their personal information, there's also functionality in the app for the client to request that that information is deleted immediately, and that would have no effect on the report that you have on your case file. So from the client's perspective, there's no need for them to worry as to which third parties have their personal data. They're in full control of that. So what we're moving on to now then is verification of the ID document. So the client will be asked to select which ID document they're going to use. For the purpose of the demonstration, we're going to have a look at a driver's license. And what the app will ask the client to do is to take a photograph of the front and back of their driver's license. Now this part of the app is powered by technology called Onfido. Onfido has been used by banks now for approximately 3 years. Microsoft also invested £50 million into this technology last year, so it's very high specification technology. And effectively what it's doing is it's interrogating that ID document for any falsification. So the best way to kind of imagine how this works is if you imagine there's a very, very large grid on this ID document. What we're looking at here is whether or not the text is in the right place, is the image in the right place, is the data on the ID document valid and consistent with that type of ID document? So for example, is there 14 numbers when there should be 13 numbers? It's looking at things like, is there a watermark on the ID document? Is the client 18 years plus of age? You'll see that they're also asked to take a picture of their back of the ID document as well. Now, on the bottom right-hand corner of this ID document, there's a serial number. So the Onfido technology will take that serial number and run it through the London Metropolitan Amber Hill Police database to make sure that that particular ID document hasn't been reported as missing or stolen. So again, it's effectively an additional security layer, making sure that the ID document itself is in the hands of the right person when the check is being completed. Now what we're moving on to is the facial recognition part of the app. So the client will be asked to take a moving and still picture of themselves. The reason that we ask the client to do the moving picture is so that the tech in this part of the app can't be spoofed. So for example, a fraudster couldn't just hold up a photograph to the tech and take a picture of it. It does need to be a genuine person completing this part of the app. Again, this is powered by the Onfido technology, and effectively what it's doing is it's going to take that moving and still picture up and match it up to the image that's on the ID document itself. Now, the technology is 98.7% accurate. It is far better than the human eye at being able to identify any false documents, and it's technology that you can rely on. So once we've got to this stage in the app, then the ID part of the app is complete. So the client has two options here. They can either click complete here, and what that would do is produce an ID report for you only, or the client can move on to completing the source of funds information. So let's say we move on to do the source of funds then. The client has two choices at this stage. Now, what Thirdfort is going to ask the client to do is give Thirdfort permission to redirect the client to their mobile banking app on their phone. If the client doesn't have a banking app on their phone, but does use online banking, it will redirect the client to the web browser so that they can log into their online banking that way. If your client doesn't use online banking at all, what the client can do at this stage is click skip this step and provide paper copies later, and that will redirect the client to the end of the app so that they can upload any supporting documents for you, which will then sit on your Thirdfort report. But let's just say your client does have online banking. So Thirdfort's going to ask the client to select which bank they're going to provide the source of funds information from, and then it will redirect the client to that banking app. Now, it's important to note at this stage that this process is a read-only process. Thirdfort doesn't have access in any way to the bank account itself. The technology that's being used here is open banking technology, which we know is designed by banks, so it's incredibly secure. And effectively, what Thirdfort is doing here is withdrawing the data for the top 20 incoming and outgoing transactions for the last 12 months, along with 3 months worth of bank statements. And as you can see, once the client has linked one bank account and provided the source of funds information, they can then go back and link in a second and third, as many bank accounts as they see fit in relation to providing you with that source of funds information. And as you can see, it's really quick and easy for the client to do. I know, I myself don't get paper statements. Most of us don't get paper statements anymore. So the benefit of doing the banking linking for the client is that the bank statements are withdrawn directly from the bank. They don't have the hassle of having to print it off, bring it in, anything like that. And you have the security of knowing that those bank statements are genuine as well. So once the client has done that, then they've come to the end of the app. Let's say, for example, you get your Thirdfort report and you're looking at your source of funds information, and you later find out that there's another bank account or another ISA that you need to get further information from. What you can do is direct the client back into the app, and they can go back and link a further bank account, which will produce a second report for you. The second icon here you see says share identity. So this is what I was talking about earlier in relation to the client having the functionality to be able to share their ID report with other vendors, providing that that vendor is also a Thirdfort client. So any share requests would appear here in this part of the app. And then the last icon is upload documents. So within here, the client can upload any supporting documents. They might upload utility bills, national insurance numbers, further bank statements, anything that you need really from the client to complete the conveyancing. And all of those supporting documents will sit at the end of the Thirdfort report once that is produced. So if we remember, when we initiated the Thirdfort check, you could also click a box that requested the client completes a source of funds questionnaire. So far, we've got the data for the top 20 incoming and outgoing transactions for the last 12 months, along with 3 months worth of bank statements. But we also need to dig a little bit deeper around the source of wealth and to where that money is coming from. So what the client will do is complete a source of funds questionnaire. They'll be asked to enter the price of the property along with the address of the property. And the app will identify the value for the unaccounted funds. Now you can see here that at the moment that figure is red. The purpose of the source of funds questionnaire is to make sure we get all of the information in one go from the client around where that money is coming from. Now the client won't be able to click complete on their source of wealth questionnaire until they have accounted for every single penny. So you'll see here the client will begin working through a set number of categories. On that list, if there is a category of, a source of wealth that isn't on there, there's also, an option for other that they can go into and provide the information. But as you can see, they'll go into each category and provide really detailed information around, where the money is coming from. So, for example, employment status, salary, how often are you paid? We'll ask them for information around their savings, things like that. They'll also be asked to provide any information around gifts as well. So Thirdfort in particular is very useful when you're dealing with a situation of gifts. So as you can see here, the client will be asked to enter the amount of gift. They'll be asked to enter the name of the person who is providing the gift, along with their mobile phone number. Now, as we know, to initiate a Thirdfort check, all you need is the person's name and their mobile phone number. So the reason that we ask for the mobile phone number of the person who's providing the gift is so that you can then carry out a Thirdfort check on that person and get a second layer of information around where that source of funds is coming from. So as the client is working through the app, then they'll account for all of the unaccounted funds, and what will happen is that figure will then turn green. And once that figure is turned green, the client will then be able to complete their source of funds questionnaire. So as you can see there, it's green, they click complete, and they'll be asked to e-sign the document. And once that's complete, then that will produce the source of wealth report for you. So from the client side of things, that is now officially complete for the client. So what will happen is you'll receive an email from us that effectively instructs you to log into Lawyer Checker and download your completed report. And this is the report that you can expect to receive back. So on the left-hand side here, you've got the image of the client. And on the right-hand side, you've got the personal information submitted by the client at the very start of the check. At the top here, this is the Onfido technology. So what we're looking at is the document itself. We're looking at whether or not that particular document has been tampered with in any way, whether or not the data on that document is valid and consistent with that type of document, and whether or not this personal information here relates to what's on the document in any way. The second layer of information is looking at the facial similarity. So that's the moving and still picture and whether or not those pictures match up to the image that's on the ID document. The next part then is the AML part of this check. So what we're looking at here is whether or not the address at the top here matches what is held by Experian for that client. That's a two-stage check. If, for example, the client fails at this part of the check, the Thirdfort app will automatically ask your client to upload a proof of address document. So you won't need to chase the client for that. We then have a check on PEPs and sanctions. This information is being pulled from LexisNexis and Comply Advantage. You can see for the purpose of my demonstration that the client has failed at this part of the check. So any information on PEPs and sanctions is published towards the end of your report here for you to digest in any way that you see fit. The second page of the document then is the scan of the ID document itself. Obviously, it's important from a regulator's point of view that you have this on your case file, so that is published there for you. The next part is the source of funds and the bank linking. So at the top here, you can see which bank accounts the client is giving you access to, the type of bank account, the bank account details, as well as the balance within those accounts. And then we have the data for the top 20 incoming and outgoing transactions for the last 12 months. Those transactions are placed in value order, and we've also got category of transaction as well. So let's say, for example, your client dropped a large sum of cash into the bank account. That's going to be highlighted here under category as a red flag for you to look into further. And if we just take a look at this top payment here, we've got an inbound income of £10,000 from Tim Smith. What I'd recommend you do there is, obviously within the source of wealth questionnaire, the client will provide information around this £10,000 and Tim Smith. We'd advise that you get Tim Smith's mobile phone number and carry out a Thirdfort check on him to identify where this £10,000 has come from. And then at the very bottom of your report, you've got 3 months worth of bank statements to get that additional information around where the funds are coming from. And if you've asked your client to complete the source of wealth questionnaire, you also have the report around what they've answered and that additional information around the source of wealth as well. Now, Thirdfort is a risk mitigating service. The purpose of the service is to provide you with as much information as possible so that you can make an informed decision about whether you truly believe that your client is who they say they are and that their funds are genuine. Another real benefit of Thirdfort, of course, is the fact that, let's say, for example, you initiated a Thirdfort check and for whatever reason the client didn't click on the link, or they did click on the link and they were struggling to complete the check itself. Thirdfort have their own support team who will recognise that the client is struggling or has chosen not to do it, and they'll pick up the phone to the client, introduce themselves, make sure the client understands who Thirdfort is and why you use Thirdfort, and then they'll support the client from start to finish to complete their check. So again, all of the chasing around ID and source of funds is taken away from you guys, and all of the technical support that sits with us. Now, effectively, that is the Thirdfort check complete, and they are the reports that you can expect to receive back from your Thirdfort check. Thirdfort is £14.50 plus VAT per check, and this is recharged back to your client. We will have given you pre-written client letter wording along with PDFs for your client care packs that helps explain to the client what Thirdfort is and why they're charged for it. So overall, that's the Thirdfort check complete. If you do have any questions for me, please do get in touch with us at Lawyer Checker, and we would be more than happy to help. Thank you.